What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Brown Sports Report, BSR. My name is Ojari Brown, and today we're really just going to be getting into NBA, last night's primetime games, Bucks versus the 76ers, Damian Lillard's debut, and getting into the James Harden situation a little bit, and also last night's game against the Lakers and the Suns with Devin Booker and Bradley Beal being out for Phoenix, and getting into LeBron's clutchness and how everything matched up with them, and also kind of briefly go over Lakers opening night against the Nuggets, which I'm not going to say too much about because it was the first game and I didn't get a chance to upload a video about it, but I'll briefly talk about it a little bit afterwards. Let's get right to it. So, firstly, last night's game, the first game of the prime time. Last night's game of prime time was the Bucks versus the 76ers, Damian Lillard's debut. And in all honesty, the Bucks, they're really just going to be a fun team to watch. Especially, it's just good to see Damian Lillard is being in a space to where he can really compete to win, and he really has a real chance of winning. He has the talent, he has the help around him, he has the co-star around him. Well, I don't know if you want to, I guess you could say Giannis has a co-star around him, because Giannis is better than Lillard, but just the story and the narrative surrounding Dame, and it's Dame's first season being with another star of that level, so it's just going to be fun to watch. And he went off. Dame had 39 points, I'm sure. Yep, 39 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists. Giannis chipped in with 23 points, 13 rebounds. And, everybody else, they just slowly chipped in as the role players should. And it was a fun game to watch, especially down the stretch. I thought it was going to get ugly pretty early on. I want to say around early on in the second quarter, I was like, okay, this could potentially get bad. And even midway through the third quarter, I was like, oh, it's kind of teetering, until the 76ers came back and it looked like the 76ers were the ones who was going to be able to pull out that game on the road, but they didn't. Now I want to get into the 76ers, but after I get into the Bucks. So for the Bucks, from what I saw, it's really just going to come down, their season is really just going to come down to how well their role players are going to be able to play and fit in. And by that I mean, because I in my opinion, in the 2022 season, and the year after they won, a reason why I felt like they lost to the Celtics in Game 7 was because the role players just couldn't hit shots. They just couldn't hit shots, especially when Giannis was drawing double teams. And it's really just come down, can you hit a timely three when I'm getting the kick out to you and you're open? It's down the stretch in the fourth quarter, 5 minutes left in the fourth. You got to hit those shots. And the reason why they lost last year against the Heat was it's kind of the same reason. Some of the role players didn't really perform as to what you expect, and Giannis got hurt. And Jimmy Butler just really, but it was really just Jimmy Butler. But that did play a part into why they didn't play well and ended up losing these last 2 years. And now that you have a closer in Damian Lillard, I think that's going to make up for a lot of mistakes, not only in late game situations, because when it comes in the late games, crunch time situations, that's when it comes to the half court offense, and can you be able to create a good look and create a good shot and make a good shot and make a clutch shot. And that's what Dame is known to be. So I'm expecting that to be picked up real quickly in terms of just the closing minutes of a game and crunch time and clutch time. And the really only question I got for them is really just their ability to their role players to step up and hit big shots. I feel like that was the reason why they traded Grayson Allen and some of the other guys they traded for Dame, because they have to, it's going to come down to, because Dame and Giannis, they're going to get a lot of different looks defensively, and it's going to come up to, obviously they're going to play amazingly, they're going to put up big numbers, but in moments to where they're not making a shot or two, and your role player is going to have to hit a big time three. Guys like Jay Crowder, even Chris Middleton at this point, I guess you would call him a role player. I feel like that would be best to where he can slide down to truly elevate this team. Chris Middleton, can Marjon Beacham step up and be that big time guy off the bench for them? Can Bobby Portis continue to hit big shots for them and play good minutes for them? So it's really just going to come down to the role players in that aspect. And I would argue that I am a little hesitant about their backcourt defense, especially when you match up with teams like especially when you match up with teams like Boston with elite backcourts. And how are you going to be able to defend that? Because I don't think Chris Middleton is going to be able to adequately defend that, especially trading for Damian Lillard. You lose some of that backcourt defense. And when you match up with teams like even the Cavs per se, or with an elite backcourt, or the 76ers if they had James Harden, or the Celtics, what they have. So I feel like that is one question that I do have for the teams. Is really just, can the role players step up and hit shots, and can they defend the backcourt, and how that's going to look when they match up against teams with sizable and just good backcourts, shot creators, and players who can make shots in the backcourt for the team. And now for the 76ers. I'm gonna talk about the James Harden situation after I get into their game breakdown. So game wise, in all honesty, I kind of liked what I saw from the 76ers, albeit they were without James Harden, but they were probably everybody was pretty much expecting they weren't going to have James Harden. So, you can't really give them an excuse. They had time to game plan for this and whatnot. And so let's be real. Joel Embiid did what he had to do. 24 points. Joel Embiid had 24 points. But it might be me. It might just be me. But just watching the game, I felt like Joel looked a little sluggish at times. But that might just be me, though. And I don't know if that was a part of fatigue, but he just looked a little bit laborish and sluggish to me. I don't know what that is. Hopefully it's not. Hopefully it's just my imagination. But he did look a little sluggish to me. I just wanted to point that out. Tyrese Maxey, 31 points. This is a guy who I feel like is going to have a breakout year this year, especially with James Harden not being on the team for the foreseeable future. I feel like Tyrese Maxey is going to play at an all-star type level and make an all-star team. He's really just going to perform and really have a breakout year this year. That's what I'm expecting from the kid. And Kelly Oubre stepped up, 27 points. He was hitting some big shots. He kept them in the game early on. That was the whole reason why they were still alive, especially through that first half when it was starting to get a little ugly. And Tobias Harris had 20 points, 20.7 rebounds. And when you have Tobias Harris as a third option, as long as he can, not disappear, and you can, because in past years he's disappeared, especially when they needed him most. But for the most part, everybody disappeared for 76ers when it came up to, coming down to crunch time and winning. But if Tobias Harris can consistently give you that between like 15 to 20 points a game as your third option, he's a big forward. He can space the floor. He's a 3-level threat. I feel like, with that as your third option, they can win a lot of regular season games like this. And I feel like they can still be a top 4 seed just strictly off of how dominant Joel Embiid can be, just on what I'm projecting Tyrese Maxey to break out this year. And if Tobias Harris can just stay consistent as that third option, I feel like the 76ers will be okay in regular season wise. But the biggest aspect for me in terms of what I saw, I don't think the 76ers have a lot of backcourt creation. They got a lot of front court shot creation with Joel Embiid. Tobias Harris is a guy who can score off the dribble and everything else. But in terms of just consistent off the dribble playmaking from their guards, I would say is there's not a lot. But because honestly, besides Tyrese Maxey, they don't really have a guy who can play make. And by that I mean really just a point guard, a guy who can, because it was a lot of times throughout the game to where you could tell that they needed a facilitator, whether that be a situation where you're going on a run, but the Bucks, you're going on, let's say like a 11-0 run, a 7-0 run, 10-0 run, 12-0 run, but the Bucks come down and go on a 4-0 run, and now the game's tied, or they're still down by 2, or they're up by 2. And you need a guard, you need a playmaker, you need a point guard to facilitate, slow things down, get a play call, get into the right hands of whoever needs to score on that play, whoever has the mismatch. And I felt like they needed that a lot of the times. And They didn't have James Harden, but if James Harden's not going to be here, you got to find a way to make up for that. And I would like to say, I think Tyrese Maxey, I would want Tyrese Maxey to step into that role because I feel like he's capable. But we know Tyrese Maxey is pretty much just a speedy guy, and he's a great shooter and scorer. He's a great scorer. And I don't, if he can dive into that playmaking and facilitating role a little bit, I feel like that would help them, especially in not even say he has to become the full-on point guard, but in key moments where you need a playmaker and a facilitator to control the game, to understand the flow of the game and control the game. I felt like that was one of James Harden's strengths, and I felt like that was one thing he brought to this team from a matchup and schematic standpoint. And I feel like they're missing that. Because it was when you got Joel Embiid, I'm pretty sure it was on back-to-back possessions. Joel Embiid has 2 turnovers. One because he has the ball behind the 3-point line, palming it like that, and Giannis just steals it, especially when it's that close. And that was how the Bucks broke open the game, in my opinion. That was how they broke open the game and really started, I wouldn't say edging away because it was still a close game, but that's how they kind of started to put the 76ers down and hold them down until they won. Because Joel Embiid gets the ball stolen from Giannis, and on the next possession, he tried to make some type of pass and gets it stolen. And then fast break, Bucks score, or it was a foul or something like that. But you can't have that. You can't have that. That's when you need a guy who can facilitate, who understands the flow of the game, does what he needs to do to get the guys in the right hands, slow things down, understand what's going on. And I feel like they need that with James Harden because they need some type of backcourt facilitating, because a lot of times they just look out of sync, and I do feel like that would be a problem down the stretch when you're going against teams like the Bucks, like Miami, like the Celtics, even the Cavs, where you just need where it's going to be a good game, it's going to be a hard fought game, and you just need somebody to facilitate for you. And I feel like that's what they're missing, to get into your sets, get into your plays. And I feel like that's going to be a problem for them, not early on, because I'm expecting them to still be a good team, regular season wise, but I think that's going to hurt. But now, speaking of James Harden, I'm going to get into it real quick. I'll probably make a separate video on it, but I think, or maybe not, I might just talk about it all in this video, depending on how much time I got. But James Harden and the 76ers, we all know the situation. I'm pretty sure you're familiar with it. And if not, James Harden, he's having contract disputes. He had a contract dispute with the front office. He felt betrayed, and now he wants to be traded to another team, which is kind of the gist of the story. It's a little more than that, but that's kind of like the general overview of it. And, say what you want about James Harden and say what you want about, the 76ers and their whole situation. But in terms of just this, not only a schematic standpoint and a roster standpoint and a roster makeup type of view, and also a timeline perspective of how we looking at this situation, the 76ers, they need James Harden. They genuinely need James Harden. I know a lot of people say you need to get him out of here. And I would say that if you are going to trade him, if you are hell-bent on just saying, we can't have this guy, we're not going to pay this guy, we have to get him out of here, just get him out of here. Just find a way to make some type of trade to hurry up and get him out of here, because that's going to be a long-going distraction, and it's going to negatively affect the team. It's going to negatively affect the coaches. They're going to be constantly getting aggravated, being asked questions about it, and the players are it's always going to be on the players' tables because reporters, and it's always going to be a story. That's going to be the whole story around the 76ers until James Harden gets traded, and that's going to be overlooming the entire chemistry of that team. And if you are hell-bent on trading him, yeah, you got to get him gone in the next couple of days. It should have been done yesterday, but you got to hurry up and get him out of here if you are stuck on saying we just can't have this guy, because it's going to negatively affect your team. But if in some way, and I know it's not salvageable, but you might have to overpay James Harden, if I'm being honest. I don't think there's another, because right now at this point in time, just from a timeline perspective, if you don't get, because if you look at a championship window, the 76ers, I feel like they've missed their championship window. Well, they have Joel Embiid, so I'm not going to say they're completely out of it, but I felt like they failed to capitalize big time on their chance. I feel like they've had 2 chances to go to the NBA Finals. I'm not going to say whether they would have won it or not, but they had 2 chances to go. One in 2021 when the Bucks won it. We all know when they were in Ben Simmons era, when they had the Hawks Game 7 at home, and their guys choked. We all know the Ben Simmons infamous passing up a layup. We all know it. But I feel like if they beat the Hawks that year, if they just find a way to grit through that game and beat the Hawks, they're going against Milwaukee, and Giannis was having a pretty historic run. But I wouldn't put the 76ers out of saying they had no chance of winning that series. And if they won that series, they would have went to the finals, and who knows what would have happened. And also last year, I feel like last year was their best chance to win it, because you're in the semifinals in the second round. You're up 3-2 against Boston. Going home, you're up 3-2, going back to your home court, and you have 2 chances to put them out. Their backs are against the wall. You have to. You just, as Joel Embiid and as James Harden and as those guys, and on everybody on the team, you just got to find a way to win that game. You just have to find a way to win a game. Because if you do that, Milwaukee was already out the picture. And I would argue that, I know Jimmy Butler was having an insane run, but I'd argue that Philly would have had a good chance against Miami. I don't think it would be crazy to say that. I think Philly would have had a great chance to go against Miami and win it and go into the finals. And once you get to the finals, yeah, they're going against Jokic, but I would argue that Jokic would have still won that series, and the Nuggets would have still won that series just because it was just an historic run by them. But I wouldn't count them out. I wouldn't say they didn't have a chance, and I don't think they would have got demolished like Miami did, in all honesty. So I felt like they're missing their windows, especially on opportune times, just because of underperforming in the playoffs. And when you look at the makeup of the Eastern Conference now, especially how top heavy it is, when you look at especially the top teams, not Miami, you could argue Miami's a top team, but roster standpoint, Milwaukee and Boston. And those are 2 teams who I think are just truly just going to be up to them too. I feel like no other team can really compete in terms of just roster standpoint and just overall ability, in terms of just how their stars play together and connect. And then you could argue that the Celtics have some deficiencies with their depth and how that's going to look come down the end of the line in the playoffs, and we'll see how that goes. But my picks to make the Eastern Conference Finals are the Celtics and the Bucks. But looking at the 76ers, you might have to overpay James Harden, just because if you trade him, you're not going to get added value back, because you're not going to, unless you trade for a solid point guard, and I'm not sure what point guard is on the market right now that could bring to what you need on the team. But so it's like you're just going to have to trade him, and if not, you're going to have to overpay him, because if you overpay him, you don't have to make it the full 4 or 5 year extension, which I'm sure he's asking for, but maybe make it a 1-and-1 deal. You just got to find a way to either hurry up and get him out of here, or just overpay him for this short period of time, because you have to look at a situation. We're missing our championship window. We're constantly having these disputes with our stars. And when you look at Joel Embiid, he's going to have a contract extension starting to come up soon. There's going to be talks about him maybe potentially requesting a trade and wanting out of Philly. And if you're the front office of the 76ers, you don't want that. So you got to find a way to make this right and to put yourselves in a position to be among that top echelon of teams, because right now you're not. So we'll see how that goes. But moving on, Milwaukee and the 76ers. Let's get into the Lakers and Suns. We all saw the game last night. Going into this game, Phoenix is coming off a win against the Warriors. The Lakers coming off a loss opening night against the Nuggets. And, a lot of things going on with, how people are talking about Anthony Davis and the Lakers. The Lakers thought their season was over. They thought they were eliminated from the playoffs. It's kind of funny, but in a sense kind of irritating to see the overreaction. But it is what it is. But let me say this real quick. the Nuggets are just a better team than the Lakers. I don't know what people expected. The Nuggets are just simply the best team in the Western Conference because it's just hard to match up with the Nuggets, especially with how the makeup of their team is and how much they run up and down the court and the type of plays they run. Because if you want to beat the Nuggets, you have to be able to lock in defensively and have, not only you have to have shot creation, but you have to be able to move the defense. And also on the defensive end, you have to be able to fight over screens. You have to be able to switch consistently and switch on time and rotate your defense. And a lot of teams fail to do that. And a lot of teams just either choose not to do that or they just can't do it. And that's why the Nuggets are the best team in the Western Conference, in my opinion. And going into this game, before I heard that Bradley Beal and Devin Booker would both be out, I was expecting the Suns to probably come in and win this game. Just because the Lakers, with Jared Vanderbilt missing, and just overall, I didn't expect that these guys, would have came in and be able to give what the Lakers needed to adequately match up with what the Suns would have. But Beal and Booker were out, and once you look at the overall situation of the team, and it was just Kevin Durant in the sense of just, a guy you can constantly count on to give you great buckets. The Lakers gave themselves a chance. And early on, it's always this with the Lakers. It starts to get ugly, and they find a way to have a comeback win. And that's good. That's good in the sense of, okay, this team is capable of making it on a run and coming back down big or whatever, and especially down the stretch. But there are certain teams and there's certain games to where you can't play like that. You just have to show dominance. You have to be dominant to show that you're the better team, especially in my opinion, to show me that I can trust you to be a top 3 team, which I got the Lakers as. But we'll see how that goes. I'm not going to redact from that pick, but they have to end up showing, there's some level of consistency to they can beat teams, and especially down the stretch, that it was looking kind of iffy. But LeBron James did what LeBron James does, and he kind of cruised in and saved their whole entire game, coming in, playing that whole fourth quarter, and just being clutch, being what LeBron is. I'm pretty sure he had like 10 or 12 points in the fourth quarter. It was insane. And overall, they were missing Booker and Beal, so it's hard to adequately judge the game. But I do like what I see from the Suns in terms of that. The Suns can still score. The Suns, they still have Kevin Durant, and knowing that Beal and Booker will come back, they're going to show out. But like I said, remember, I called it. Go look at my Western Conference standing power rankings and predictions. They need rim. They don't have rim protection. That whole fourth quarter, that was just LeBron. Well, that whole fourth quarter was just LeBron. That whole fourth quarter comeback and win was just LeBron going to the hole and just laying it up, going on fast breaks and just having chances to just easy looks at the rim and offensive rebounds, and just no rim protection and no paint presence. I said that was going to be a problem with Yusuf Nurkic and trading DeAndre Ayton for Yusuf Nurkic, that you're going to lack a good bit of paint presence and rim protection, and especially and rebounding at that. Now that Josh Okogie surprisingly does make up for some of that just because of his effort on that end, but it's going to be hard to stop teams in the paint, especially when you don't have any real. And it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out once they get down the stretch of the year, and especially come playoff time. I think regular season they'll be fine, but once it comes down to the playoffs and teams really start attacking and putting emphasis on your weaknesses, and your weaknesses start to truly show, that's going to be prevalent, and that's going to start to show. And like I said, they're lacking in paint protection and paint presence. So, and also their point guard spot. I know. I know some of the Reggie Miller mentioned it in the broadcast, but maybe for a game like that when you're missing your stars and you need another guy who can facilitate an offense. But I wasn't too crazy about their point guard spot. Reason why is because I would expect, I think Bradley Beal and Devin Booker are guys who are capable of playing that point guard role. And Devin Booker, he's a gym rat. He's a hard worker, and he played alongside Chris Paul. I'm sure Chris Paul was a mentor to him in some ways in terms of basketball. And I would hope that he would take some of that knowledge. And I think Devin Booker is extremely capable of playing a point guard type role. Not saying he has to specifically be the point guard, because I'm not saying they need a true point guard without a doubt. But I think Devin Booker and Bradley Beal are the guys who can share that responsibility of setting up other guys, of being smart with the ball, of noticing the control and understanding the flow of the game and controlling the overall game. And so I'm not too worried about the point guard spot. As long as those two are healthy and can come back, we'll see. But I did mention injuries, and those two guys were out for injuries, so that is a problem. Now going into the Lakers. The Lakers, if you notice, D'Angelo Russell couldn't play in those last minutes, if I'm not mistaken, just because they had to sub in Gabe Vincent, because they needed somebody who could adequately switch and consistently play defense, and they needed some effort on that end, which I thought was pretty bold. But because I wouldn't expect D'Angelo Russell to be too happy about that. But maybe he realizes. I think D'Angelo Russell has matured to where he realizes, okay, I'm just not meant for this situation right now, so I need to let my other teammates handle it. And hopefully that's where he's at right now. I would like to say he's matured to that point. So let's see. But overall, AD had a pretty good game. LeBron did what LeBron did, even though he didn't pop out on the box score. If you watch the game and what he did in that fourth quarter, it was insane. And so much for a minutes restriction, because he played the entire fourth quarter and ended up playing 35 minutes, which is like 5 or 6 minutes over on what they wanted him to play. And I expected that. I didn't expect the minutes restriction to last long, but I'm still expecting the minutes restriction to be in play until some point. On certain games, LeBron just not going to have to play a lot of minutes, because at some point in time, the Lakers are going to get going, and they're going to be beating teams, pretty greatly by big margins, to where it'll be a blowout, or to where they're not always going to be playing from behind, hopefully. So I would expect the minutes restriction to, ebbs and flow, just depending on how the situation of a game-to-game basis, if I'm being honest. And some negatives I saw for the Lakers were they need better shot creation on the offensive end, because I felt like too many times, and maybe this couldn't attribute to just overall scheme and coaching ability, but I feel like there's a lot of times to where they play a little too much ISO ball. They're playing too much of just trying to just find an open shot and just trying to create a shot. I feel like the best way for the Lakers, and this has always been a positive for the Lakers, is in the paint. When you have Anthony Davis, especially these last 5 years in this LeBron AD era, these last 5 years, they've always been a plus in the paint. So when the Lakers are getting inside, getting inside opportunities, they're a successful team. And once you continue to get in the paint, that leads to kickouts, that leads to driving kicks, that leads to open threes. So I feel like they just have to attack the paint more. I feel like they're lacking in that aspect. One thing they also is not only their transition defense, but I feel like they have a lot of turnovers. I feel like their turnovers are something that they have to manage and they have to get a hold on, because I feel like that is something that is going to come back to bite them if they don't start taking care of the ball. And like I said, in overall just shot creation, they need to stop running these ISOs. They need to get D'Angelo Russell and AD in constant pick and rolls. Austin Reeves, constant pick and rolls. They need to get constant motion throughout this offense, because just having these guys sit around and continue to stay stagnant, it's not a successful formula of a consistent offense, because we've seen what they do on defense. I don't have no problems with them on defense. Like I said, they're going to be one of the better defensive teams in the league. And last night showed, especially down the stretch, that they are a good defensive team. It's just in terms of just coming up with a consistent offense and a consistent flow to where you can adequately score throughout the game. But besides that, great win for the Lakers. And it's going to be interesting to see how this whole Western Conference plays out. So that's it for this video. Let me know down below what you guys think about last night's games. I will be doing a recap tomorrow on all the other, the regular games that weren't mainly covered by the big programs and stuff. And once I watch the games on that, go back and watch the games. And once I get the chance to go back and watch those games that weren't on primetime television, I'll be able to come back tomorrow with a recap and show you guys everything and tell you what I think about, the rest of the league. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. I hope you guys enjoyed. Peace. Love.